transportation will be more shared. So private car ownership will be decreasing, and we will combine different modes of transportation and we will share more.
What could be these enablers? Maybe one or two enablers that you believe that they definitely need to change in order to become the first city in Latin America that can adopt this new trend.
We have a lot of data and insights that can help structure cities and a lot of technology and data that can help us design for the improvement of the future of mobility.
Do you think that, you're changing, we the users are changing this, we will stop owning cars altogether? Will urban transport shift to subscription model? What is your idea on these new ways of transport where the consumers are shifting?
For government and for the public in general, there's still in Latin America a lot of a gap in an understanding that this is not just a trend, this actually has benefits and add value.
Welcome to the Tech4Sight Podcast, where we are exploring how technology is reshaping industries, economies, and our daily lives. I am Diana Daniels. I'm your host, working in the intersection of telecom, blockchain, and digital inclusion. This podcast is all about the foresight, understanding where the world is heading and what we can do today to prepare for tomorrow. Today's topic is the future of mobility in Latin America. The world is shifting toward electromobility, but what does that really mean for a region where infrastructure gaps, affordability, and policy play a huge role? Can we make zero-emissions mobility a reality? And how does Telecom, the very networks that connect the people and businesses, are intersecting in this transformation? To help break this down, I'm thrilled to welcome Belen Romero. She is the general manager of Uber's mobility operations across 12 countries in Latin America. Belen is an independent board member with extensive experience in technology and payments. She is one of the top experts in the marketplace, sustainability, and building diverse and impactful boards and directors across the region. She has an impressive background that includes pivotal roles on Uber, where she is right now, and also IBM and other strategic consulting firms. But today, she's at the forefront, shaping Uber's vision of electrification, sustainability, and the future of mobility across all of the world's most dynamic and complex region, which is Latin America. Belen, welcome to the Tech4Sight Podcast.
Thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Appreciate it. Electromobility sounds like the future, but the reality is that it's taking off in Latin America. We need to really think if it's really happening. I was reading the other day about the stage where some of the facts in the global economy is working on. EV, the adoption of electric vehicles, is expected to take a shape or to take a hit of 40% in the new car sales by 2030. But still, Latin America is below 2%. The biggest barriers, what are those? Is that infrastructure, affordability, policy? What do you think? And what I would love to hear from you also, Belen, is the ride-sharing platforms. I believe that they're playing a key role in accelerating this adoption. Tell me your take on this.
No, that's absolutely right. Uber has stated our mission to become a zero-emissions platform by 2040, and that's a global goal. As you mentioned, some regions globally are seeing already more progress, such as Europe and the US. And in Latin America, we do have some success cases that I would love to maybe mention a little bit about, but we have identified three main challenges in order to drive that level of electrification in Latin America. The first one, you mentioned affordability. The first one is definitely economics. And there's a key formula that needs to happen for this transition to happen. And that formula is that the cost of an electric vehicle, maintenance of that electric vehicle, and charging needs to be at least the same, if not better, than the cost of a combustion engine vehicle, plus fuel, plus all the maintenance that is required, and other costs. So the total cost of ownership and uh, fuel or electricity should be at least the same for this transition to happen. And
Gotcha.
this has a number of components. Usually in Latin America, the cost of electricity is lower than the cost of fuel in many markets. So that helps in the equation. However, when we look at the cost of acquiring and maintaining a vehicle, today there's a big gap between the cost of a combustion engine vehicle and an electric vehicle. And the truth is that today in Latin America, many of the vehicles, electric vehicles that are arriving to the market, tend to be more premium vehicles. And that's one of the areas where Uber is working to help make that equation work. We are working with OEMs in bringing models of EVs that can be more affordable. We are working with governments to support, lowering either taxes or import barriers for these models to be able to come into Latin America. And as well, on the flip side, we are helping in generating more earnings while using an electric vehicle. So getting more utilization on that vehicle, and that helps obtain more earnings that can help support a maybe incremental cost of an electric vehicle. So that's the first part of the equation, which is super important, which is affordability and the cost. And as I mentioned, I think there Uber can help play a key role in democratizing access to these electric vehicles, so that drivers that use our platform can access these vehicles at an affordable cost, the right models, the right prices, and get the right utilization out of those vehicles in order to make the economics work. So that's sort of the first barrier that
First step.
I
like that because what I see is that, Latin America, especially public transport, still runs like on diesel buses from the 90s, and if we think that at least in Latam, 75% of the CO2 comes from transport, we need to be honest that something needs to change. So what is the second roadblock that you are paving the way?
The second one that we're experiencing is lack of charging infrastructure.
Yes.
That's a big problem. However, at Uber, our CEO said, climate is a team sport. So that's an area where we need private companies and public companies to come together in order to create that charging infrastructure. Because depending on the public sector alone in Latin America will not be enough. So we do need those players contributing into building this charging infrastructure that is needed so that drivers don't have this charging anxiety, right? Of I'm going to run out of battery and there's nowhere for me to charge. So that's a second challenge. And we've been successful, as I was mentioning initially, in some countries, forging alliances between different companies. So, for example, in Chile, we have an alliance with Enel, and they built what was at the moment the largest charging infrastructure in Latam for the use of an electric fleet where we rent those electric vehicles to Uber drivers. So that was a model where we combined a fleet manager that manages those vehicles so that they are utilized, and a company like Enel, a utilities company, that invested in providing the charging infrastructure as well as making sure that the economics around the charging prices worked. We also worked with a company that is in mining of lithium, and they sponsored the project so that the economics would work, as well as an investment bank. So we had to bring together different players from the private sector. We also worked jointly with the government to make sure that the right incentives were in place. And by combining all these companies and aligning them, we were able to launch a product called Uber Green that offers users the possibility
To choose.
to choose sustainable products. And it's been growing since we launched it, and it is a team effort. But we were able to tackle the economics and the charging infrastructure. And the
Okay.
third challenge is education. Uh,
Mm.
Education for users about the benefits of choosing more sustainable options, educations for drivers on how the economics do work, and what are some additional benefits. We actually hear a lot of feedback that drivers prefer electric vehicles. Apparently, for driving, they tend to be more comfortable, less vibration, less noise. So a number of other benefits as well. For government and for the public in general, there's still in Latin America a lot of a gap in understanding that this is not just a trend. This actually has benefits and add value to users, to the cities, to the governments, and to the companies.
I like that. I guess that we need to take in consideration this piece of the user. I can tell you, for instance, I'm talking about maybe beyond cars. Everybody is being focused on the EVs, but maybe, I don't know, real mobility not necessarily is about owning a car any longer. I got to tell you, I personally do not own a car. It has been over 10 years with no car. When I need one, either I rent one or I take an Uber or a taxi and in many European people, I'm in Europe right now. Many people here in Europe, they take still lots of transportation or public transportation. And I know that this is an issue in Latin America, but when we have this big rise, I see everybody either riding e-bikes or scooters, these multimodal type of transports. I believe that is changing the way that we, the user, are moving in the cities. So do you think that, we are changing, we, the users, are changing this? We will stop owning cars altogether. Will urban transport shift to subscription model? What is your idea on these new ways of transport where the consumers are shifting?
So you touched upon two trends that are coming up and are already happening. One is multimodal, and as you mentioned, like sustainable transportation isn't only electric vehicles. You can walk, you can ride a bike, you can take an electric public transportation, and transportation is becoming more and more multimodal. Mm, we see this preference from users. We also see this trend that you were mentioning of younger generations giving up on car ownership as something aspirational, something that gave status. And we definitely do see this trend, which is the second trend, that is transportation will be more shared. So private car ownership will be decreasing, and we will combine different modes of transportation, and we will share more, share the assets like public transportation or even vehicles. So that's definitely a trend that we're seeing. As you mentioned, Europe and the US are probably a bit ahead, but it's where transportation is going towards. And as you mentioned, we need to be able to work together with governments, for example, to
Yeah.
advise them. We have a lot of information, where should public transportation routes happen, or charging, where should we put the charging infrastructure.
All the data you guys have is amazing.
We have a lot of data and insights that can help structure cities, and a lot of technology and data that can help us design for the improvement of the future of mobility.
I see, that there's this increasing synergy between mobility and the new tech companies. Like on my industry, I also see it like with telco, because with the rise of this, connected vehicles, AI-driven mobility planning, smart city traffic, do you think that 5G and data-driven transport networks will accelerate this electromobility, as you call it, adoption? How does the telecom and the connectivity, do you think, that play a role in here?
I think they are a key enabler. The fastest we can generate and storage data, the fastest we can connect not only people now, but also vehicles to the network. The more information we have, the faster we can move towards electrification and also a bit further into the future, autonomous vehicles. So I think it's key and interconnection, the interconnection that telco provides is a key enabler for this future of mobility.
Totally. And I guess that mobility and AI is changing the way that we connect, that we transport, that we communicate. And that, I believe also that then the industries, all industries are evolving so fast that means that our new skills that are needed to change in the process too. What do you think that are the skills that we need more in your industry? What about if someone is listening today and wants to work in the future of mobility, what should they be learning?
I think you mentioned AI, and the way I see it, for me, technology is a key tool that enables what we do, which is connecting people and allowing people to move. People can go anywhere, can get anything, and that's enabled by technology. And for me, the way you have to think about it is technology and AI serve a purpose and help you achieve that goal. For example, we use a lot of AI to improve safety before, during, and after rides. I don't know if you've seen a feature. It's called Ride Check, but sometimes you're in the vehicle and it's taking longer than usual, or there's a stop, and you get a pop-up message saying, "Are you okay?" And if not, you can just click there and we'll connect you to the local police or someone who can support. And that's AI understand that something looks off in the ride. And that's just one example of how technology is helping us improve the experience.
I love this, Belen, because there was actually a very controversial uh, post that actually went viral in Mexico about a user abusing a little bit their position towards the poor driver of Uber, right? And I guess that this is where technology can be safe for both, because at the end, there are two individuals so far right now in the vehicle. One is the user and the other one is the driver. And I guess that technology can help, can be that bridge in between, making a safe environment for both of them, right?
That's absolutely, and technologies such as audio recording or even dash cams in some vehicles, um, AI and technology behind it that makes it encrypted, that storages, that makes it untouchable unless it's required by the law for an investigation. That makes everyone safer in the platform, and that's a way of using technology to enable this.
And what about autonomous driving? Do you see? I mean, we know that in San Francisco is already a vendor provider that is doing that. Do you see that happening soon in our region?
In Latin America, definitely will be at least 20 plus years.
Really?
We were discussing, today we're even lacking the infrastructure for electric vehicles. Uh, so we do need to advance on charging infrastructure, education, and in autonomous regulation, right? Working with government. What do those regulations look like? And the economics piece. Today, an autonomous vehicle may cost $500,000. So it's still a long way to go until the economics work, especially for a region like Latin America. I think this is going to be a case where the technology is going to be ready before the economics for commercialization. But again, I see Uber playing a key role here because given those higher costs, utilization of vehicles becomes key. And so, in a way, Uber will become sort of the operating platform for these autonomous vehicles to operate in so that the economics work and we can connect all the users and the demand and the need for transportation that we know happens in the city, as well as all the information that we have about specific times, how demand peaks on some times, where those vehicles are needed. We can bring that to these autonomous vehicles so that we can help accelerate when the unit economics become more feasible. But for Latin America, I still see that a long way to go. And this will be a transition. This won't be something that happens from one day to the next, similar to electrification, where we are, for example, I mentioned the Chile case. We also have big advances in Costa Rica. We have some work being done in Brazil, Mexico, Ecuador. So we are advancing in some markets, but it's a journey that will need multiple players, both from the public and private sector. And autonomous is the same, probably a longer journey for Latin America.
So if you will dare to choose a city in Latin America where this could happen the first, which city will it be?
So I think one of the key things is the government. And it's so difficult to say in Latin America because governments change a lot, both from the political parties, but also in their North Stars about what they're going after. So it's hard to me to say, to be honest, which would be the pioneering city. But hey, open, like if governments want to be sponsors of something like this, they need to start building this ecosystem of private companies that can enable it. And as you mentioned, like telcos.
I love it because if let's say if a major of a city that is watching us today wants to say, I want to be the first one in implementing this, what does that major of the city needs to do right now? We spoke already about like your 3 roadblocks. Then what could be these enablers? Maybe 1 or 2 enablers that you believe that they definitely need to change in order to become the first city in Latin America that can adopt this new trend.
So one, I think, is around education and really thinking about how to implement this from a regulatory perspective.
Interesting because you did speak about your 3 roadblocks were, right? Affordability, infrastructure, and education. But you didn't talk about at all about regulation. You don't think regulation is becoming a roadblock or it's an enabler?
So in most countries in Latin America, regulation for electrification is not a roadblock. However, for autonomous, that's a more tricky subject. So I think for autonomous, that can definitely be I don't think of a roadblock, but something that needs to be figured out early in the process so that we can build towards that versus waiting and regulating after the fact, which is more inefficient. I think the other one is the infrastructure piece. So making sure that there's an infrastructure to charge those autonomous fleets. There's more than can be done regarding smart cities, like, for example, putting technology in the traffic lights, getting more sensors in the city. So there's a lot of other IoT technology that can help support this as well. And definitely the economics, that's where they need to work with the private sector to make that work. Because for autonomous, I think that's going to be the trickiest piece. I don't know if you heard our Uber's last quarterly earnings call, but Dara mentioned that the cost today for an AV is the same per mile, is the same as the whole of Uber's cost structure. So there's still a huge gap in economics in the AVs to make it a reality.
I see this. Well, I guess that that gives us a really good opportunity to shift into one of my favorite sections of this podcast, which is the 4 trends and 4 dreams. And this is where we're going to zoom in and zoom out, looking at both the present and the future. And this is how it works. First, I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions about the trends that are actively transforming the industry today. And then we're going to go bigger for 4 bold questions about your dreams for mobility in the next 5, 10, 25 years. So the goal is to get like short, precise answers and maybe one sentence or one word. And are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Here we go. So let's start with the trends. Trend number 1. What is the biggest technological shift accelerating electromobility in Latin America right now?
Connectivity.
Yes, I agree with you. Let's go to trend number 2. What's the most unexpected player driving sustainable mobility outside of the traditional auto industry?
I think can be the case of how the mining company supported our efforts. So a mining company investing in driving sustainability, I think that was one that I wasn't expecting initially when we were able to do that partnership in Chile.
Oh, that is amazing. Then trend number 3. What policy change or is having already the biggest impact on urban mobility in the next 5 years?
I think this one is around making vehicles accessible and multimodal. So those two combined, public transportation, bikes, scooters, it's going to be multimodal, and we need the policy changes to allow multimodal to work.
So this probably is very, very similar, the answer, but I want your take on this. The trend number 4 is about behavioral shift. What are you seeing among consumers?
So we're seeing consumers definitely trend towards wanting sustainable mobility, affordable mobility, shared. As I mentioned, private car ownership is decreasing, and governments are also wanting to limit the number of vehicles in cities. So that's definitely a trend. I would say those 3 are the most important shifts we're seeing in consumers.
Love this. Now let's go to dream bigger. Let's gonna picture the world in the next 5, 10, or 25 years, and let's gonna think what mobility can look like if the resources maybe were not a limitation. So then, number 1, if you could design the perfect city for sustainable mobility, what is that one feature that should definitely have?
I think, as I mentioned, it has to have data collection points that enable safety.
A real smart city collecting good data and being able to use the data. I like that. Your dream number 2, it's about moonshot. What's that moonshot in technology that can completely change how people move in Latin America?
I think for me, technology has to be an enabler for inclusion in Latin America. And it's not only the way people move, it's providing access to opportunity, both generating earnings, but also connecting different areas that may have been marginalized from where the economic opportunities were. How do we connect people to opportunities, including even like payment methods? And how do we get everyone connected and give everyone the same opportunities? And for me, technology has to be a key enabler for that.
I love this. I love also the way that you put it on democratization. I guess it's totally in it. And then let me dig a little bit in a industry that is my industry, which is the telecom. So if your industry and my industry, if mobility and telecom merge into a seamless system, what do you think that might look like? How our industries will merge?
And I think the merging of industries is something that we're already seeing. For example, in Africa, there's a lot of merging between the payments world and the telecom world. These both electric vehicles or autonomous vehicles are in a way a big cell phone. So they are connected. Uh, there's something in between a smartphone and a computer, only that they have wheels today, maybe in the future, who knows. But I see these two industries combining and working together in the future because data and connecting is key. Again, mobility is just like connecting someone from one place to the other. And we are going to be using telecom to foster and accelerate those connections.
I love this image right now of like we are driving in a huge mobile phone. This is so fantastic. The future of mobility definitely is changing super fast, and I really thank you for this segment. And now, one of my favorite questions that I really want to insert in today's podcast is, if you can go back, when you were 18, and give yourself uh, an advice about thinking that you know everything that you know today, you can transfer, yourself into the past and then see the little Belen. What would you say to her?
I think for me, the key advice is every stage in life has something that's unique. And so make the most out of that unique part of every stage. Play as a kid, be very curious and study and learn. And I think that's something that carries throughout many stages. Have an open mind, continue learning about different cultures, about how the world works. Um, be passionate about what you do and make sure you enjoy fully every stage because every stage comes with challenges, but also with very unique beauties. So just make the most out of it. Don't rush into the next stage. And yeah, always continue being curious and learning. I think those would be my advice.
Curiosity, exploration, and learning. I love this. And so many of the youngsters today, Belen, look at Uber as an aspiration company where they probably can go and work for, or even create, be the next Uber of something. If you will have an advice for them, what it will be, what moonshot project would you think that they should be pursuing, and how can they achieve success?
I think the key thing that they should be thinking about is solving problems. At the end of the day, everything we do is solving problems, like, enabling the way the world moves for the better. That's solving a problem. So I think critical thinking, problem solving, understanding who the user is, who you're solving for. And in Uber, for example, our user is the rider, but our user is also the driver. And
Yeah.
in the future, our user will be the fleets of electric vehicles or of autonomous vehicles. So understanding the user, their needs, and what problem we're trying to solve, that for me can make you succeed either building your own startup to solve a problem or here, because there are many problems and there are different ways of solving them. So that mindset of understanding the user, the needs, the problem, and how to think differently about ways to solve it, I think that's what the youngsters need to think about and work if they want to just succeed in general.
I love this because, as a founder, many times we focus on the wrong equation. And sometimes what happens is that people fall in love with the solution, and we need to fall in love with the problem in order to find the different type of solutions, because we need to pivot around, the market, the user, the environment, and whatever is happening. So this has been, yeah.
Technology will enable more solutions. So
Yeah.
the problems, there may be new and they may evolve. But for sure, technology will bring new levers, new things we can use into creating new solutions.
Yeah, the solution might need to change according to these technologies, that the problems will continue to exist eventually. And it might change the problem or the type of problem, but it's good to be in love with the problem. Belen, this has been an incredible conversation. And before we wrap up, I want to share my 3 takeaways for our listeners. The first one, I believe, is about infrastructure. Infrastructure is the biggest barrier that we see on the EV adoption in LATAM, and without significant investment in changing our networks or incentives, I guess that these transitions continue to be slow. As you said, technology is becoming probably first than the possibility to implement it. My takeaway number 2 is about the future of mobility. It's not only about the EVs, it's also about rethinking how the urban transport through either multimodal solutions can take us, and hopefully in between my industry and your industry, the telcos and the mobility industry, there's some integration in there. I see definitely AI doing lots of things over there. And my takeaway number 3 is about innovation that you're speaking about. Innovation in mobility is going to come through democratization, collaboration. I see that you're doing this collaboration across public and private sectors and in between industries that is working together, that we're building this smarter and more sustainable cities. Did I get it right?
Perfect summary, Diana. And it's been a pleasure connecting with you today. Thank you so much. I love this that you're doing these podcasts, getting us the latest trends and things that we should be thinking about.
So before we close this chapter, my darling, I would love to see if there's anything else that you would like to share, especially a message for or an advice for that inspiring leader that is changing the future of transportation. What do you want to tell them?
I think the first point is there's definitely going to be a change. I think probably the last one that we had was when Ford thought about the automobile as something for the masses. And through his innovation in the assembly line and the new technology at the time, that's our reality today. But since Ford, we haven't experienced such a big shift. And I think that the 4 trends that we talked about today are coming and are going to change the way in which people move. So shared mobility instead of more individual, multimodal mobility, sustainable being electrification, but also being walking or use this model, and eventually autonomous. And what benefits will this bring? So we know change is coming. A big change is probably going to come. And I think we have to remember that technology is an enabler, a lever that we can use to enable this change. But let's also remember our responsibility and, being ethical, thinking about the third or fourth potential effect of our decisions. So I think that's probably the advice that I would give.
Thank you, Belén. This has been super incredible conversation. Mobility is one of the most exciting frontiers of innovation, and it is clear that we are at that tipping point. So thank you so much for sharing your insight with us.
Thank you very much.
And to our listeners, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge in making either zero emissions mobility a reality? Drop us a comment on the social media and let's keep this conversation going. Make sure to subscribe to the Tech4Sight podcast for more future-focused conversation. I'll see you until the next time. Keep looking ahead and keep yourself foresighted. See you soon.